Liverpool lost 3-0 against Manchester City at the Etihad on Sunday. And I think this game was a very strange match because if you look at the game purely from the chances in both boxes, I think it's somewhat even because if you look at Man City's goals, there's deflection involved, two deflections involved if you count Konate's header onto Haaland. But then if you look at everywhere else other than the goals, namely the middle of the pitch and those areas, I think Liverpool were just absolutely dominated in. The press wasn't right, the passing wasn't right. So is that the most damaging thing about that defeat? Because yes, you can accept a loss against Manchester City, but between both boxes, Liverpool were completely outclassed.
Yeah, this is it. I think you would be more willing to talk about hard lines, which Liverpool do have in some elements. As you say, the two goals that get City 2-0 up are very fortuitous. And then, of course, it's an absolutely incredible strike, the third one. Um, and of course, then they have a goal ruled out themselves. So, that is, I know, is a huge talking point. So, yeah, you could say in the game that Liverpool have been unlucky, but we all also watched the game and saw, City's dominance in it. Because ultimately, I mean, for coaches, all you can do really in a match is, you can't provide that bit of magic at the top end of the pitch. You can't provide that tackle that will cut out and prevent a goal or whatever, or produce the brilliant save. What you are trying to do is get the ball into their final third as often as you can and prevent it coming into yours. And in that regard, City were incredibly dominant because Liverpool, they couldn't build up, they couldn't get the ball into City's final third consistently, and City were getting into theirs very, very consistently. And yeah, they had a bit of the rub of the green in terms of how the goals came about, all from very, very low expected goals shots, but equally they deserved them because they were playing football far better. And I think Slot himself said, they were better in every aspect of football compared to us, and particularly in the first half. And I would agree with that assessment. So, the fact is, Liverpool cannot afford to be coming away from this thinking, oh, we've been unlucky. And, even if there is some element of truth to that, they've got to look at the fundamental issues they had in playing football in both halves, I thought. So they've just got to be better than that. You've got to play miles better than that. To beat Manchester City and not just be relying on the rub of the green. And, because the fact is there are so many defeats this season where you could look back and say, well, they were unlucky in that aspect. I think back to the head injury, or the lack of stoppage around the head injury in the early goal against Manchester United, the penalty against Galatasaray. I'm sure there are a few other ones where you could kind of pick out. But the thing that links them all is that Liverpool didn't play well in any of these games. And if you don't play well, then you cannot be talking about the fine margins going against you, because ultimately the teams that are exposed to fine margins the most are the ones that are not the great teams. And this isn't a great Liverpool team at the moment.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it was Van Dijk who said after the game that obviously the performance wasn't good enough, but it was more the consequences of the loss because he was asked about are Liverpool still in the title race and can Liverpool get back into it? And he said, I don't think that Liverpool have a right to be able to look at the table now because of so many losses. And I wanted to pose that question to you about whether you think now the title race is done because Arsenal drew with Sunderland, obviously, and we have talked about how they would drop points earlier in the season, but Liverpool aren't there to capitalize on it. And now the gap is 8 points and the gap to Manchester City is 4 points. But given Liverpool's form, it doesn't really feel right to talk about the title race, does it?
No, I would go as far as to say that it is over for Liverpool now, and people could kind of you kind of get a bit of stick for saying that really, because it's 27 games to go, and so many points to play for, but it's everything. You could be quite bullish on the fact that Liverpool were going to win the title early last season, because it wasn't just that they built up a lead, and 8 points, by the way, is so much bigger than people realize. That is, the points per game you have to go at versus the points per game Arsenal have to go at, and the City in there as well, by the way. So it's two teams you've got to overhaul. Um, it doesn't take much in terms of the gap. Once it starts to get to 8, 9, 10, you are pretty much out of it. And I also look at how many defeats does the champion tend to have, and Liverpool have already got 5. I mean, we're talking about getting to the end of the season with maybe they can afford maybe one more defeat, and they've got to go to Arsenal. They've got, they've still got some difficult fixtures left. So there's just, and then on top of that, not just the gap and the lack of defeats that they're allowed, but the fact they're not playing well at all. The underlying numbers are terrible. It would be require basically a complete U-turn in performance level that we cannot see coming at all, and being able to consistently put that together. Not having a game where even if you play well, things go against you and you lose anyway, because that can happen and probably will happen again at some point this season. Um, so you add all that together, and there's just absolutely no chance that Liverpool will win the league this season. It's not too early to say that. That is it's analysis. It's not a gut feeling or trying to be dramatic. It's just facts. They won't win the title this season. So you got to kind of recalibrate then your aims for what the remainder of the campaign is. But it certainly won't be chasing the Premier League.
which is an unfortunate thing to say considering how much Liverpool have spent. But this is just the reality of where we are.
Well, I've kind of got to be in my bonnet about this though, because I think that the spending for me, it probably needs to be stopped being spoken about in this way, which is that, oh, well, the expectation should be higher on Liverpool because they spent so much money. I actually think it's the reverse. I think spending so much in one summer is not a good thing. I don't think you get good outcomes from that. And I mean, how many times do we have to see this to learn that this is the case? Completely changing your squad in one summer, you will suffer from that. And this is not to say that Liverpool's signings will all be bad in the long term. I truly don't believe that, but I believe it has massively hurt them that they've spent so much. I mean, maybe they should be judged in the next 2, 3 years in terms of what they achieve off the back of that spending, of course. Which, by the way, we also have to note they sold so many players. They clawed half of that back. Arsenal actually outspent them in terms of net spend. So I know the headline figure was very high, but they did recoup a lot of that. But like I say, in the short term, I think it's just really hurt this team because I think you're looking at it and you Milos Kerkez's big left back signing was supposed to solve one of the small issues that Liverpool had last season. He's on the bench because he isn't playing well enough. Alexander Isak, the striker who's supposed to take them to a new level because he's not Darwin Núñez and he's a far better. He's got one Cup goal so far and he can't get on the pitch because he's not fit. Other signs, Florian Wirtz supposed to revolutionise that midfield, add some creativity to it, really be the kind of jewel in the crown of the Liverpool attack. He hasn't been very good so far. So, you put that all together and what the signings and what that money's giving you at the moment is not a lot. It's giving you worse than having Darwin Núñez there, worse than having Robertson there, worse than having the old midfield. And so I don't think that the spending should be a stick to beat them within the short term. I actually think it should be seen as kind of mitigation for the manager and the issues that they're having so far this season, to be honest.